Welcome back. 365 Sports, Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. And Pat Smith, our good friend, our SEC go-to. Pat, you tweeted out last night, and I really appreciate this because I didn't have to look for it, but I knew that a couple of years ago when the SEC first discussed going to 9 games, that they had a format of who the 3 protected rivals would be, and Brandon will put that up on the screen here in just a second. How close to that list do you think that they will keep, and what do you think has changed in that time?
Yeah, it's always great to be on. Here's the interesting thing, and this is one of the last times that Nick Saban kind of went crazy about something. Basically, what took place was the SEC behind the scenes. They've been working on this for about 4 years about going to potentially to 9 games. And so basically what happened was they went back and they took an average of everyone's record over a 10-year period. And basically they used that to try to protect rivalries and then also kind of put you in a situation of the potential teams that you could play in the future. Well, Alabama's came up because Tennessee has always been one of the historic rivalries. Basically, it's always been Tennessee and Auburn. Well, Tennessee, over the course of the 10-year period that the SEC used the data, they weren't very good. And so Tennessee was able to slide in there. Well, LSU's been really, really good over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. And so Alabama was going to have to play Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee based on that data. So Nick Saban lost it. Like Nick Saban since 2014, he has been clamoring about having a 9-game conference schedule. He was one of the very first people in the SEC saying this is ridiculous. We need to go to 9, blah, 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 blah. And the conference never did it, obviously, when he was there. And then all of a sudden, he was against the 9-game because he was like, if this is going to be potentially what I'm going to have to play, that this is not right. Like, I do not want to do that. So I'm not really sure exactly moving forward if they're going to go back 12 years, 10 years, 7 years, 6 years, whatever the case may be. But they're going to have to do some diving and put some decimal points to stuff to try to figure out who potentially, because you want to put them in tiers. You want to put them in the top tier, middle tier, and the bottom tier. And so obviously Tennessee at one time was in the bottom tier, but they're not anymore. So that's why Alabama's might fluctuate. So, but it is an interesting list, at least to work off of. And for shows like yours and mine, it's something that we at least can have some fun with.
Yeah, Pat, it's cool to look at and cool to kind of figure out how this might all work. And I think exciting for the teams that are involved, depending on what your projection looks like, right? Because some of them might be a bit more difficult than others. But this was a long time coming. I don't think Greg Sankey's just randomly throwing this out, this timing-wise, the week leading into the opening of college football weekend. There's money involved, and there's the strength of schedule component as well that clearly got to the point where they were comfortable enough that, hey, now we'll jump off the diving board and we'll go to 9 games. How's this sort of been received in SEC country? Are people pumped up about it? Are they a little bit worried that, hey, my team might not make bowl games as much? Kind of what's been the reaction you've seen over the last 24 hours?
Well, I'll answer the first part first in regards to Greg Sankey. Greg Sankey has been working on this, like I said at the beginning of the interview, for 4 years. I mean, every single time they got together, whether it was in Birmingham for just general meetings, whether it was spring meetings down in Destin, this was a hot topic of conversation. So take you back a few years ago, basically they presented it to ESPN and it was very close to happening. ESPN said, guys, we already pay you a lot of money. We're not paying you for an additional 9th conference game. Like we're not doing that. Well, at that point in time, the presidents of the SEC said, okay, well, if we're not going to make any more money off of it, then why are we going to put our teams in harm's way of not making the college football playoff? So we're going to stay at 8. Well, interesting thing happened. ESPN a couple of years ago came back to the table and said, you know what? This is going to be worth an extra $4 to $5 million per team every year if you add an additional 9th game. And so that got the SEC's attention. And then we've had all this problem between the Big Ten and the SEC trying to figure out automatic qualifiers, the 5+11 model, all that kind of stuff. And so they basically punted it this last spring. But then once Greg Sankey and the SEC sent out their wonderful little packet of information at SEC spring meetings about how tough the conference was, all the data points with strength of schedule, then lo and behold, the college football playoff decides to change that model in regards to their formula with the strength of schedule. And then the SEC gets on a call this week and they said, you know what, I think it's time for us to go ahead and pull the trigger and move forward. But as far as the fans go, it is split, guys. I mean, it is right down the middle because you've got the old guard in the SEC. They do not want to mess up any type of rivalry whatsoever. They want to stay the way it is at 8. They don't want to go to the 9. But the younger generation, they're like, look, more good games. I'm all about it in this now world of college football playoff, which is basically NFL light. You've got to have the mindset that you're going to lose multiple games per year. You're not going to go undefeated to win a national championship. So I think the younger crowd is all for it.
Pat, just looking at this list that they had, one of the teams I think that would get kind of screwed in this as far as old versus new SEC is Florida, because they would have the cocktail party with Georgia is protected. That one's, obviously you can't get rid of that one. But, somebody's got to get South Carolina, who is still, even though they've been in for quite a while now, a relative newbie to the league, right? With no, titles or any kind of great thing there's not a rivalry there that goes back, like the cocktail party. And then Oklahoma, sure, which would be awesome to see every year. But I would say that Florida's biggest rivals within the SEC outside of Georgia are LSU and Tennessee, and they wouldn't be protected and they would rotate through those. So those fans would kind of maybe I would hear their gripes be like, okay, great, we can play Oklahoma, but we don't want to play South Carolina every year. We didn't like playing South Carolina every year when we played South Carolina every year.
Right. And that's the thing, the fun thing about this exercise, because those teams that you see listed on there, you have to think of them in tiers.
Yeah.
And so with South Carolina being at the time a team that was not very good under Will Muschamp and things of that nature during the time frame that they use this data, that's why South Carolina fits in where they currently fit in. That's why these, especially maybe the second and third tier teams, those would absolutely change in regards to the way they move forward and what they look like. The thing that the SEC, besides the fact that they want to, be in a good position for the college football playoff, there's a situation, guys, and y'all are in the state of Texas. This is crazy. Texas A&M has been in the SEC since 2012. The University of Georgia has never stepped foot inside Kyle Field and played the Texas A&M Aggies. Never. As a member of the Southeastern Conference. Now, A&M's gone to Athens, and of course, last year, Georgia went to Texas, but Georgia's never played inside Kyle Field. That is ridiculous for Texas A&M to be in the league that long and the conference the way they have done their scheduling, that those two teams have never played. They want to set it up to where the rotation happens, where at least every 2 to 3 years, you're going to get to see a different school. That way the fans stay interested, and obviously the TV folks will be very happy about that.
So when it comes to Bama and Auburn, they got Iron Bowl already locked in, right? Is there would Bama have to play Tennessee, or would there be a third team that seems automatic for them? And then for Auburn, what is it? Alabama, Georgia, and who do you think that third team would be if you had your way with it?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of Alabama fans called in my radio show today, and they were basically, and I know you guys are going to laugh when I say this, but the closest schools in proximity in the Southeastern Conference are Mississippi State and Alabama. Tuscaloosa to Starkville is the closest distance between any two schools in the Southeastern Conference. In the last 2 years, Alabama and Mississippi State, they haven't played. These two teams have got a long history with one another. Of course, Alabama, I think, won 80. Now, I'm not lying when I say this. I think they're like 85-12 all time against Mississippi State. So a lot of Alabama fans are like going, look, forget about, LSU or Tennessee, but, we need to play Mississippi State. And then you have the Auburn people that are saying, well, we've always had a really good relationship with, even like a Florida. I mean, they haven't played Florida at home, I think, in about 11 years, which is crazy. Two big names in the conference like Auburn and Florida, and they haven't played at Jordan-Hare in that long. So it's a situation where I think the conference is going to do their best to try to make sure that those little instances that I just talked about will not happen in the near future, and it will make ESPN and the TV people very happy.
So you sound like you do have in the Big 12, if they had to do this, even with the new leadership and how good it's been, like Farmageddon's not a protected rivalry. That game's happening tomorrow in Ireland. And next year, we don't know if it's going to be played, right? And they kind of screwed it up with Texas and Oklahoma and Nebraska from the beginning, back when the conference formed. But you're confident the SEC leadership will be able to get to some sort of point that the fans will be mostly happy and not aggrieved?
I think more than anything in the world, you will have the protection. And that's why, and one of the things that the SEC released yesterday, they want to protect a lot of the SEC, ACC rivalries. So think about this. You got Florida State, okay? Well, if you got 9 conference games and then you've got that game to end the year, all of a sudden that's 10 big games. They want to protect South Carolina and Clemson. They want to protect Georgia Tech. They want to protect Louisville and Kentucky. All these Southeastern rivalries with some of these ACC schools. So they put in there, so if an Alabama doesn't have that ACC rivalry, they still have to go out and play a Power 4 opponent or Notre Dame to fit the bill of the 10 Power 4 games. So you've got your 9 that's going to be required because that's conference games. But the SEC is also telling you out of your 12, you're going to have to add another Power 4. So with the SEC always being dinged about these cupcake games, lettuce games, playing FCS teams, stuff like that, they're going to have 2 opportunities now as opposed to the 4 that they used to have.
At worst, I think the fact that it's week 0 and there's a handful of games but no SEC teams playing, this gave everybody something to chew on for one more week, certainly have fun with before we get into the full meal deal next week. I do need to ask you, since you're right there at ground zero, basically, there was a story earlier this week. I went to bed and Oklahoma had more national titles than Auburn, and I woke up and they didn't anymore because Auburn had claimed these titles. Now, I know there were some like that were unofficially official, but what's kind of been the reaction to Auburn saying, "Hey, man, we're all of a sudden now we're was it 7 or was it 9-time national?"
7.
What is it?
Now they're 9. Yeah, there was 2 that was always recognized, 57 and 2010 with Cam Newton. But yeah, we all woke up the next morning and then all of a sudden they had the 1910, 1913, 1914, and so on and so forth. Auburn people, they're loving it because for so many years back in 1984, Alabama, all of a sudden their SID found 5 national championships. They went from having 6 national championships to 11 national championships in the mid 80s. And that's just kind of the general standard now of how many Alabama's won, which is the Alabama fans, they say they won 18. So Auburn said, well, you know what? I know we're the little brother in the state, but you know what? If y'all can do it, we can do it. And who cares what anybody else thinks nationally? We're Auburn and we're family, and we're going to say that we're 9-time national champion. Guys, they had those numbers, and that stadium was painted before that story got out to everybody else. It was pretty amazing. They are relishing in it, and they're loving it. And Alabama fans just have to sit back because for many, many years, they did the same thing.
I'll give him 2 things. Jason Campbell was on the show the other day. He convinced me. 2004, I'm fine with.
2004, yeah. Listen, that team. Bob Stoops, Big Game Bob. He ran his mouth that whole year, and just, of course, where Auburn started the season in the rankings, that ultimately screwed them out of an opportunity to play for the national championship. And you guys remember what a lopsided, ugly national championship game that was. Auburn would have been a much better matchup than Oklahoma and USC.
Yeah. All right. I didn't ask you this, and now it occurs to me I didn't. So do you think that this schedule at 9 games changes their mind about the automatic qualifiers, or they're still on the 5+11? Because the coaches were probably
5+11.
Okay.
Yeah, 5+. They are absolutely that. There is no momentum whatsoever. The love affair that was going on between Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey, that has definitely hit a rocky patch right now. The SEC, they're pretty much hell bent right now, and the people that I talk to, it is 5+11. Period. Now, if you want to expand it a few more teams or whatever, we can talk about 5+ whatever. But as far as the automatic qualifying goes, the SEC right now is falling in line with what Brett Yormark and obviously what Jim Phillips is saying in the ACC. So you got 3 against 1 right now. And with Tony Petitti coming out with that ridiculous idea over the weekend of 24, 26 teams, this is not the NCAA basketball tournament. This is college football. So the SEC is going to hold firm on that. So we'll see what happens. I firmly believe, guys, that next year we will remain at 12, and then they're going to get all their ducks in a row, and that's going to be another year of everybody arguing and kicking the can down the road. And then the next year after that, I think that's when you'll see wholesale changes.
Yeah, when I saw that, I thought it was like a fake account, with like no way.
Exactly.
Like, I thought it was like a spoof account. Then I thought, is Tony Petitti like in his office doing cocaine and just been like 28? Let's go. What is going on? Well, Pat, Pat, we're probably going to have you back on next week because Baylor plays Auburn. And we'll have to break all that down. And apparently,
absolutely.
Okay, real quick. Hugh Freeze playing all three quarterbacks, or is that gamesmanship?
That's gamesmanship.
Yeah.
Just like he told everyone in the media here in Alabama that they have a different coach calling the play on every down. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I didn't make that up. You can pull the audio. Yeah, you can pull the audio. It's there.
And then he kind of walked it back, but didn't walk it all the way back. Like, it was very weird.
Let me tell you something. Having to cover Alabama and Auburn on a daily basis, I mean, we are in heaven. I mean, it is like gold every single day in regards to what we're covering and what they're saying. So it's a great job to be in Birmingham, Alabama in football season. I promise you.
Yeah. Pat Smith, co-host of the Three-Man Front. Pat, we'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good, brother. Take care.
All right. It's Pat Smith, one of our favorite guests. Yeah, Craig, I'm just looking I think it would be great for Florida and Oklahoma to play every year. Like, I would love that as a football fan, but there's no rivalry there. It's just
saying that they should.
I mean, that's in that list right there.
Okay.
Yeah. So the list that he had, the initial one they had before the tiers,
gotcha.
Florida and Oklahoma would be playing every year.